Hey everyone, today we're going to examine Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. Let's see if this refers to a coming New Testament Messiah, as all Messianics assume it does. Shalom everybody, and welcome to Beit Tefillah. We recently uploaded a video with this title, but about an hour after doing so, we decided it wasn't in-depth enough, and so we pulled it down to redo it and add more information to it. So the result is this revised video that you are watching now. I've gotten a lot of requests to do a video on this particular verse. This video is going to be a good clarifying video for those who wish to answer those who claim that this verse, Isaiah 9:6, pertains to some kind of New Testament Messiah. When absolutely straining for proof that a New Testament Messiah was prophesied in the Tanakh, Messianics will always whip out Isaiah 9:6. It's one of their go-to verses. So let's read that verse as it sometimes appears in Christian Bibles. And I say sometimes appears is because all Bibles can be a little bit different. They're translated a little bit differently, but this is kind of the average way that it's written, okay? Isaiah 9:6. For a child shall be born unto us, a son shall be given unto us, and the rule is on his shoulder. And his name is called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Father of Continuity, Prince of Peace. Christian translators had to really twist and change the translation of this verse to fit their Christology. And they did this by switching all of the Hebrew verbs in this verse to the future tense when they were originally written in past perfect tense. And this is so easily proven if one puts in just a tiny amount of time to research this. But most Messianics will not because it goes against their beliefs. So they go back to pretending that their translation is fine and they stay in their fairy tale land. Well, let's hear the first half of this verse one more time the way it reads in most Bibles, as I just read, Isaiah 9:6. For a child shall be born unto us, a son shall be given unto us, and the rule is on his shoulder. And now let's hear that part of Isaiah 9:6 the way it should have been translated with the proper verb tense, according to the ancient Hebrew text. For a child has been born unto us, a son has been given unto us, and the rule was put on his shoulder. This child was already born at the time this was spoken. And this was roughly 750 BCE, so at least 700 plus years before the supposed birth of this Christian Messiah. So it should read, has been born or was born to us. That comes from the Hebrew word yalad. Here's an earlier verse in the Tanakh where we can see yalad used in context in Genesis 4:26. And to Seth, to him also a son was born. Was born, past tense, was born, yalad. In every single case, this Hebrew word yalad is used in the Tanakh. It was translated correctly as was born or has been born, past perfect tense. All except for one single verse. And can you guess which verse this is? If you guessed Isaiah 9:6, you'd be a winner. Now let's examine the last part of Isaiah 9:6 where it reads, and his name is called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Father of Continuity, and Prince of Peace. Now the first obvious thing that Messianics will point to is that he is called Mighty God and will say, see, that's referring to the Messiah. No, it's actually not. For a better understanding of Hebrew names in Scripture, let's look at the names of a few prophets in the Tanakh as examples. Yirmiyahu, better known today as Jeremiah, means Yehovah will exalt. Yeshayahu, better known today as Isaiah, meaning Yehovah is salvation. Zephaniah, better known today as Zephaniah, meaning Yehovah has hidden, or the secret of Yah. Nehemiah, better known today as Nehemiah, meaning Yehovah comforts. Names in the Hebrew Scriptures are very important, and many contain a shortened form of Elohim's name, having Yah or Yahu in them. Hezekiah is the English translation of his Hebrew name, which is Hezekiah. If we break the name Hezekiah down into two parts, the first is Chazok, which means mighty, and Yahu, of course, is a shortened version of Yehovah, the name of God. So Hezekiah's name means Mighty Yehovah, and translated into English, where they took out Yehovah's name and replaced it with God, they get Mighty God, just as we're told his name means in Isaiah 9:6. The name Hezekiah in the Hebrew language means mighty God or the might of God. Also, let me make note here that Elohim is our Father. He was never known as or called a Prince of Peace. Hezekiah was a wonderful counselor, his name meant mighty God, and he was a Prince of Peace. Those were descriptions of a human king who was steadfast for his Elohim. So I just want to stop here and say that if you take the time to read 2 Chronicles chapters 29 through 32 and also Isaiah chapters 36 and 37, you will see what all Hezekiah did in accordance to the Torah and why Elohim favored him as much as he did. Hezekiah reestablished the priesthood and the sacrifices and broke down all the pillars and asherim in the land. And he called to the people of Ephraim and Manasseh that they should come to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover, as it hadn't been kept for a very long time. So Ephraim, Manasseh, Asher, and other tribes of Israel came to Judah to observe it. And at the same time, the king of Assyria came and surrounded the walled cities of Judah, preparing to seize them with 185,000 of his warriors. He mocked Elohim, he threatened King Hezekiah and the people of Israel, and Hezekiah prayed to Elohim for deliverance. And as the people of Israel were inside the gates of Jerusalem for the Passover, the messenger of Elohim passed over the land in the night and killed all 185,000 soldiers of Assyria. Imagine that when they woke up in the morning and looked over the walls to see all the men surrounding it were laying there dead. This is such an incredible miracle, and it truly showed the mighty God of Yisrael. We can easily see why it was that Elohim spared the wicked king Ahaz, because of his righteous son Hezekiah, who would lead the people to reestablish Torah, and the people would see the might of Yehovah. That's why Hezekiah was given the name which means mighty God. Let me point out something else. Isaiah 9:6 in some Bibles, such as the King James Version, have it reading, "And his name shall be called." This in Hebrew was originally recorded as Vayikra Shemo. His name shall be called, but in the Hebrew it says Vayikra Shemo. So what's wrong there? Well, this is a good example of the tense being changed. I believe the first time in Tanakh we see the Hebrew word Vayikra, it's in Genesis 1:5, where it's recorded, "And Elohim called the light day." And in Hebrew that sounds like Vayikra Elohim laor yom. Vayikra. Now, if you aren't familiar with the Hebrew language, but you've done Torah portions for a few cycles, this should be a very familiar sounding Hebrew word to you, as it's not only the Hebrew name of the book of Leviticus, but a title of one of the Torah portions. And you would know by now that most of the Torah portions are named after the first few words of how that particular Torah portion would start. And Vayikra starts out by saying and referring to Elohim, "and he called to Moses." The meaning of Vayikra in the Torah portion that bears this title is "and he called." Vayikra, past tense, "and he called." Not future tense, not "and he shall call" to Moses. Remember we just read about a son that was born to Seth? Let's read the part of that verse again, and the 5 more words that come after that in Genesis 4:26. "And to Seth, to him also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh." Vayikra, and he called, past tense, his name Enosh. It's as clear as can be, and you don't even need to know Hebrew. Just compare the words in a concordance like Strong's, which is a Christian concordance, but it's going to show you this anyway. So how can we be sure that Isaiah 9:6 is really about Hezekiah? Hezekiah isn't even mentioned by name in Isaiah chapter 9, but all we need is some closer examination and a little bit of logic. First, let's hear 2 Chronicles 28:27. "So Ahaz slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city in Jerusalem, but they did not bring him into the tombs of the kings of Israel. And Hezekiah his son reigned in his place." So, King Ahaz died, and Hezekiah, Ahaz's son, became king. Isaiah chapter 1, that few people seldom read when they pull things out of context, but Isaiah chapter 1 starts with this verse. Note the 4 names mentioned. Isaiah 1:1. "The vision of Isaiah son of Amoz, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, the kings of Judah." So this verse here notes 4 kings who reigned during the time that Isaiah was a prophet. Isaiah chapter 7 starts with this following verse. Note 3 names of 3 generations of kings here. Isaiah 7:1. And it came to be in the days of Ahaz, son of Jotham, son of Uzziyahu, king of Judah. So when comparing Isaiah 1:1 to Isaiah 7:1, we notice whose name was in 1:1 but not included in 7:1. Hezekiah. Since we know from what we just read in 2 Chronicles, King Ahaz died and his son Hezekiah became king. That's the clincher that in Isaiah 9:6 it could only be referring to Hezekiah with his father King Ahaz dead and the rule being put on his shoulder. After Ahaz came Hezekiah, who we know as Hezekiah, whose name means mighty God. That's who was being referred to in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. So why was Isaiah 9:6 tampered with? Well, it's simple. Christian translators changed the translation of Isaiah 9:6 to sound like a prophecy or a future telling of their coming Messiah, and that made it nothing but a lie that we can easily see. And we can see and hear most of the Hebrew roots teachers of today using this verse to try and validate some kind of New Testament Messiah because that's what they already believe. And they don't look into it any further to make sure what they believe is true. They don't do any research on this whatsoever. They just keep repeating the same stuff that they heard from their pastor in church on Sunday morning. You know, when you show people how the fulfillment texts in the book of Matthew are based on lies, and the first one is so easy to see from the altered text in Isaiah 7:14, and how the text was also altered in Psalm 22, and the text we looked at today in Isaiah 9:6, you'd think that more people would look into it, wouldn't you? I mean, if the translators have to lie to get people to believe in some kind of New Testament Messiah, isn't that pathetic? If they have to take the verbs and change them from what they were originally written in past perfect tense, meaning it already happened, and make it look like a future event, so it looks like some kind of prophecy, so they can somehow justify their idol, that is truly pathetic. You know, one by one, we can easily disprove the idea that these prophecies in the Old Testament are supposed to refer to some kind of New Testament Messiah. They can easily be disproven by simply reading them in context and merely applying just a little bit of study. Well, I hope this video blessed you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so yet. Shalom and a shout out to everyone who is Yisrael and scattered worldwide in the dispersion. Everybody be blessed and have a wonderful day.